They called it Seabrook, the kind of California coastal town that made postcards lie. Cliffs rinsed in gold, gulls like scraps of paper in the wind, and a boardwalk that smelled of kettle corn and secrets. Lena Morales kept her head down and her hands busy. Day classes at the community college, night shifts cleaning rentals. The studio she lived in wasn't charity. It was a foster care scholarship apartment, the kind you earn by aging out with decent grades and no one to catch you when you fall. Marina Vasquez from 2B, a widow with a hammock on her balcony and a laugh like warm bread, found Lena retaping a cracked window and said, "Mija, that breeze will win if you keep fighting it alone." She lent a ladder, then tea, then time, and the kind of attention that does not pry but holds. Connor Hale crashed into Lena's life like a wave that looks silky until it throws you. He was money in a linen shirt, a Tide green convertible, a grin built for summer. He spotted her on the pier wiping sunscreen off rental bikes and said, "You look like trouble I could actually learn from." She said, "You look like an elective I can't afford." And then they laughed, sailed into banter, skated into kisses, and at midnight in his beach house kitchen shared strawberries straight from the carton. His hands were warm, his promises were warmer. The future, he said, could be a party with just 2 invited guests. She tried not to believe him. She did anyway. When the test turned positive, Lena walked barefoot to the edge of the bluff and counted the pelicans, breathing slow, hand over belly. She waited for joy to settle into brave. Then she found him at a bar with friends and ocean blue lighting. "Connor," she said, and her voice trembled with hope she couldn't swallow, "we're having a baby." For a beat, he was a statue of a beautiful liar. Then he blinked to life, glanced at the table of glittering people who ate their laughter with caviar, and said, lightly but precisely, "I didn't order that, Lena." Something small tore. "Our baby," she corrected. "Don't do this," he murmured. "Don't trap me with, 'Look, we had fun. You're great, but I didn't sign up to be someone's dad.'" The friends pretended to be clouds. The music thumped. He reached for his keys, his future, his exit. "We should break up," he added, like a tip tossed on the table. Lena made it out before tears made a scene. She ran the boardwalk until her lungs burned. On the sand stairs, she stopped, folded, and let sea wind blur the town. That night, Marina brought pie and silence, and when Lena finally whispered, "He said he didn't order it," Marina pressed a palm to the young woman's cheek. "Then let him starve," she said softly. "We will cook for 2. The months honed Lena into something taut and glowing. She bought onesies at a thrift shop and stitched tiny waves on their hems. She found a used crib from a family moving inland and cried over the kindness of strangers. Money was a cliff face. She learned where to place her feet. One late afternoon, sun slanting like honey, Lena saw a woman in a silk trench coat push a designer stroller toward the recycling bay behind the grocery store. No bag, no boxes, just the stroller. The woman paused, jaw set, then left it beside the blue bins and walked away like a tide going out. Lena's heart tripped. Waste was a language she refused to speak. She rushed over, wheeled the stroller home, checked the basket. Blanket, a soft toy fox, a folded envelope. Inside, hospital forms, a paid invoice for a pediatric cardiology consult, and a surgical appointment next week in San Diego. Baby Eli Kaplan, 8 months old, heart defect. Her throat tightened. Someone needed this paper trail. Someone would be lost without it. On one form, a street address, across town. Lena grabbed her hoodie and the stroller handle and ran. The house at the address was neat in the way grief sometimes is, tidy so nothing spills. A woman opened the door with gray eyes that had forgotten how to blink. "Yes?" she asked, voice smoked by nights without sleep. "I'm Lena," she said, lifting the folder. "This was in the stroller you left." The woman's mouth tilted, not quite a smile. "I'm Irene Kaplan," she said, And you're kind, but the papers are theater after the curtain fell. She took the folder, set it on a table already organized by sorrow. My grandson died 2 months ago, Irene added, with the directness of someone too tired to soften truth. My son and his wife left for Tel Aviv last week. They said California hurt to look at. I thought if I started with the stroller, the house would forgive me. Lena's hand flew to her belly as if to shield her child from the word died. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears sudden as summer rain. Irene looked at the swell beneath the hoodie and exhaled in something like wonder and ache. You're expecting? Yes, Lena swallowed, alone, but not afraid. The second sentence tasted like a dare. Sit, Irene said, and the order was mercy. Tea appeared without asking. Stories unfurled in soft threads. Of Eli's laugh that made the ceiling seem lower and safer. Of nights counting breaths. Of the cruel arithmetic of hope measured against time. When Lena confessed the bar scene and the sentence, "I didn't order that," Irene's jaw tugged. Men like that, she said, think love is a buffet. Taste everything, pay for nothing. Lena laughed wetly, unexpected and grateful. My neighbor says, let him starve. Your neighbor is wise, Irene replied. She studied Lena with a deliberateness that felt like being chosen. You don't have parents? At Lena's headshake, Irene nodded once, decision clicking into place. Then here's what we do. You let me be a grandmother where I can. I'll help you find a stroller that doesn't hum with ghosts. I'll teach you the art of soup and the science of paperwork. You bring me the sound of a baby breathing in his sleep. We'll keep each other alive. They made a ritual of it. Irene took Lena to the farmer's market and taught her to choose melons by listening for the moon inside. Marina taught swaddles that actually stayed put. Lena worked, studied, stretched the days like dough. At night, she wrote letters in a notebook to the baby. Dear little wave, today I felt you turn under my ribs. Dear little wave, I bought a blanket that smells like clean sun. Dear little wave, I am learning to stay. When the contractions came, Marina drove like a saint who'd stolen a race car, and Irene coached breath over speakerphone. Hours blurred. Pain became ocean, then a door. And then, joy, feral and pink, crying like a promise he intended to keep. She named him Santi, short for Santiago, because he arrived like a pilgrimage completed by surprise. Weeks poured into a new kind of calendar. Santi learned to fix his fist on Lena's finger. Lena learned there are rooms inside exhaustion where love keeps candles lit. Irene showed up with soups and tiny socks. Marina showed up with gossip and almond cookies. The three of them formed a constellation that did not ask permission to shine. Once, at the boardwalk, Lena saw Connor at a distance with a different girl and a sunscreen smile. His gaze slid past the stroller, then stuttered, then landed on Lena's face. Something like caution flickered. He lifted a hand, a half-wave. Lena tucked the blanket around Santi, kissed his sleepy forehead, and turned toward the smell of kettle corn. She did not speed up, she did not slow down. Ocean hissed, gulls fussed. Somewhere a street musician played Here Comes the Sun, and for the first time in her life, the lyric felt literal. The first year sharpened her. She returned to classes, studied late while Santi snored like a tiny bear. She discovered she was good at arguments on paper and better at refusing to lose. Law, maybe, Marina mused. Irene, surprisingly, agreed. You fight clean, the older woman said. You fight to keep safe, not to win. That's rare. Lena smiled, dizzy with a secret future. Then I'll fight for people who forgot what safe feels like. On Santi's first birthday, they took a photo on the cliff. 3 generations that weren't by blood, but were by breath. The wind did what it always does, tried to take, tried to topple. They leaned into one another and stayed standing. By the time Santi turned 7, Seabrook knew his pockets rattled with inventions and riddles. He had a cowlick like a sea spray flag and a habit of asking the truest question in the worst moment. Lena had become the kind of attorney who frightened bullies with impeccable manners. She wore her hair up in court and her heart out at home, and the town learned to trust the woman who always found the claws they missed. Irene's gray had gone silver. Marina's balcony now held a second hammock for small feet. The three of them still shared soup and storms and grocery runs. On Saturday mornings, Santi and Irene fed gulls stale baguette and conducted interviews about cloud behavior. On Sunday afternoons, Lena took him to the library and taught him how to locate himself in stories that didn't know his name yet. The day everything bent was ordinary until it wasn't. Court let out early. Lena stepped into a salt-bright plaza, heels quiet, mind still holding the last sentence of her closing like a seashell. Ladies and gentlemen, safety is not a luxury, it's a right. Across the fountain, Irene and Santi were finishing ice cream. "Counselor," Irene called, her voice a trumpet of pride. "Mama!" Santi yelled, sprinting. He crashed into her with the faith of a boy who expects gravity to cheat for him. Lena scooped him up, breathing in sugar and shampoo. She looked up and saw Connor. Time did an old trick, slowed, glittered, lied. He was still handsome. He was also thinner, expensive, and tired around the eyes. A woman in couture hovered at his elbow with a mouth that said advantage. He blinked, recognition sliding into him like tide under a door. "Lena," he said, like a word he'd practiced once and never used again. Santi's head swiveled, curious. "You know this man?" he asked, plain as salt. "Long time ago," Lena answered, calm as a judge. She set Santi down and squeezed his shoulder. "We're due at home for soup." The couture woman tsked, theatrical. "Is that the lawyer who took you to the cleaners?" she pouted to Connor, too loud. Irene's eyes sharpened into needles. Marina, from a bench, materialized like backup with a tote bag full of lemons and righteous wrath. Color rose under Connor's tan. His jaw worked. "You cost me," he muttered to the other woman. But his gaze had snagged on Santi's face. The eyes, the grin that tilted left, the way the kid cocked his head as if waiting for the ocean to confess something. He stepped forward, hand half lifted. "What's your name?" Santi blinked. "Why?" "Because I asked," Connor said, reflex more than kindness. Santi frowned, weighing. Then, "My name means saint," he grinned, "but I'm still practicing." Lena felt Irene's hand slide into hers, bones and history. The other woman, Connor's companion, looked bored of the math. "We're late," she announced, "because people like her are always late to something that doesn't matter." Connor told her without turning. It stunned him. How easily the old tide pulled. Memory of a strawberry in a midnight kitchen, the shape of Lena's shoulder in summer, the sentence he'd said that had rewritten him into a smaller man. He cleared his throat. "Lena, can we talk?" She studied him, a professional assessment and a personal audit. About what? He flinched, a flicker. "About responsibility," he said, and the word fit him like a rented suit. "About being part of," he faltered, gesturing at the constellation that had formed without him. Santi watched them, solemn now, small chest rising with the effort of understanding an adult plot twist. Irene bent to him. "We head home," she murmured. "Soup doesn't stir itself." The boy nodded, slipped his hand into hers, and together they formed a moving boundary. Lena's voice, when it came, was gentle and steel. "You can talk," she said, "but my son won't be a stage for your regret. He has only ever known anchors. He does not need a tide that forgets where it's going." Connor inhaled as if about to dive. "I was a coward," he said bluntly. "I thought love was leisure." His eyes flicked to Santi, then back. "I don't know what I'm asking for beyond a chance to not be the man I was." Lena looked at him for a long, lucid beat. "Then don't be," she said. "It's a solo job." He nodded, as if she'd handed him a sentence to serve and a map to nowhere. She turned, gathered her people, and walked toward the sun-struck street. Behind them, the ocean breathed its endless lesson. Come, go, come, go. Make up your mind. He didn't vanish. For once, he didn't. 2 days later, a letter slid under Marina's door addressed in unfamiliar humility. Lena read it at the kitchen table while Santi built a city of spoons. Connor had written about rehab, not the glamorous kind, the slow one where you learn how not to flee yourself. He wrote about a trust fund he couldn't trust, about nights that tasted like ash, about a therapist named Raj who told him fatherhood didn't begin with a DNA test but with a calendar. He didn't ask for entry, he asked for instructions for staying outside without doing damage. Lena considered. Irene said, "Boundaries can be bridges if you choose the right lumber." Marina said, "Let the boy keep his world whole. Curiosity will come. Prepare the ground." They agreed on letters first. Connor could write to the family in Seabrook, and Santi could open them when he felt like being 7.5 going on 8. No lies, no gifts that glitter more than they mean, no sudden introductions in public squares. Connor agreed like a man who knows parole terms keep him alive. The letters were awkward at first, weather and apologies. Then they found a gate, stories about a dog he fostered who taught him patience, about the time he burned pancakes and ate them anyway, about a sea turtle release where he cried without asking permission. Santi drew comics in reply, a caped attorney mom, a superhero grandma, a neighbor who fought with lemons and laughter. Connor pinned the drawings to his fridge like saint cards. One twilight, months later, Santi asked, casual as a pebble, "Was that man my before dad?" Lena set down the dish towel. "He's your biological father," she said. "He wasn't ready then. He's trying to be decent now. You are allowed to be curious and careful at the same time." Santi thought, "Can I meet him in a place with lots of exits?" She smiled, proud and aching. "We'll meet him on the pier at noon. Son's good at telling the truth." They did. The day was so clear it felt opinionated. Connor arrived in a t-shirt that didn't brag and eyes that didn't beg. He knelt to Santi's height. "Hi," he said. "I brought nothing except my name." Santi's mouth quirked. "Do you know how to tie a fishing knot?" "No," Connor admitted, "but I'm good at learning things I should have learned earlier." "Okay," Santi said, and handed him a line. Lena watched, every muscle a promise. The second this hurts him, the sea gets another body to feed. But it didn't hurt. It stretched, like dough, like days. Connor did not try to be a father out loud. He showed up when scheduled, left when time said leave, and never called Santi by a name that wasn't his. When he forgot himself and reached for a past that wasn't his to touch, he pulled back, apologized, and tried again smaller. Some evenings he and Lena spoke like two survivors at the same bonfire. Not friends, not enemies, just witnesses. He never once said, "I didn't order that again." Instead, he learned to say, "Thank you for protecting him from me then." Seabrook kept being Seabrook. Cliffs, gulls, gossip. Lena won a case that kept a family in their home. The paper ran a photo of her laughing at the courthouse steps. Santi popping into frame like punctuation. Irene planted tomatoes and taught Santi to wait for red. Marina dated a saxophonist and installed a wind chime shaped like a lighthouse. On a late summer night, after Santi fell asleep under a blanket that smelled like clean sun, Lena stood on the balcony, the dark an ocean of listening. Connor texted, "Thank you for letting me be better at a distance. You were right, it's a solo job. If he ever wants me closer, I'll come slow." She typed, then erased, then typed. "Keep writing. He needs steadiness more than spectacle. From inside, Santi stirred and sighed the way children do when dreaming of safe places. Irene's lamp glowed across the courtyard. Marina's wind chime lifted its small, brave music. Lena touched the scar she carried, where love had torn and healed stronger. Down on the boardwalk, the kettle corn stand closed for the night. A teen swept sugar into a neat line, then into a pan, then into the bin. The ocean kept breathing. Come, go, come, stay. Lena looked up at a sky so crowded with stars it seemed illegal, and whispered to no one and everyone, "I ordered this." And Seabrook, kind, untidy, relentless, whispered back with surf on rock, "We know."